That was a gun.
I'm not voting.
If we want to build our nation.
The problem with the Somalians.
Just want to experience something else than a black man.
Move on, move
Be like a horse with blinkers on.
Honestly say, I was about to have sex and then I pulled
crap,
up.
but it's nice.
I'm Terry Crawford-Browne. I'm a former international banker, became a revolutionary. Trevor Manuel calls me the gorilla on his back, and I'm the arms deal whistleblower who took President Zuma to the Constitutional Court.
Heather Son, business person, high school in the 80s, idealist, concerned for our country, and currently a business person.
Africa Melane, talk show host, a great cook, and a person who generally is excited about this country.
Cecil Shabalala, originally from the Vaal, but now live in Cape Town.
The Constitution. Every South African should have a copy of it. This is about my third copy. The others have fallen apart. But Section 1 is universal adult suffrage, national common role, regular elections and multi-party system of democratic government to ensure accountability, responsiveness and openness. Parliament, the National Assembly is elected to represent the people and to ensure government by the people under the Constitution.
I always make this point. That's the one book that everybody who holds a green barcoded ID has to be answerable to. And that book is the most important for me, more important than the Bible, more important than the Quran, more important than the Torah or anything else for that matter, because we can all be held accountable to that.
I think internationally, worldwide, people are hurtful with institutionalized democracy, where the politicians have lost all principles. They change their principles like their socks just to remain in office, just to collect the perks and whatever. They have no principles. And this is reflected internationally, that people are fed up with institutional democracy in the normal terms.
I'm actually one of those bizarre, strange South Africans who still very much believes in this country. And even with the challenges that the Constitution has been facing in the last couple of years, I love the fact that the leadership of the government of the day is not getting what they want. So Public Protector Thuli Madonsela, we can tell stories about how she's been taken to the cleaners by the leadership, but the Constitution does not allow them to get away with it in any way whatsoever. And that excites me.
What is upsetting people, that politicians will switch their principles
Yeah.
daily. Their shoes, their overalls, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
And we're saying, hey, if you're going to represent me, I want you to actually be consistent with what I believe in.
So what I see happening in our system, for example, is that when you have a leader who's in power, who represents maybe not the values that we don't think is what's going to the great country that we believe that we have. If that is the symbol at the top, I believe that it brings out a lot of other people who want to fall behind that slipstream, cut corners, go into corruption and so on. And when we have the good symbols, I believe that there are a lot of people who want to feed the good dog. And what is it? So for me, the challenge of values is, how do we get to put those values up on, and for me then it comes back to the electoral system. How do we get to then control what we believe to be the values, the good dog as a symbol at the top?
This issue of corruption. I mean, corruption started the day after Van Riebeeck arrived, and Cecil Rhodes only carried it further. So we have a whole legacy of corruption in the white era as well as the post-Apartheid era.
Something that we need to get right is there's a reason why people are voting for the ANC in the numbers that they are. And that is not wrong. A lot of us seem to go, how can you vote for Jacob Zuma? We don't understand it, granted, but it doesn't mean that that is wrong. That is the will of the people, and the people's voice has been heard. Question is, what can you and I do today to hold this democracy to account? And I'm saying we can, and it's us who are not doing it.
I agree.
This is the issue that's actually going to get us back to basics, to say, hey, we've got a hugely progressive constitution, we've got to make it work. And yes, it's the time now to get into it, and the checks and balances that have been somewhat not destroyed, but trampled on the last 20 years. Let's get back to basics and make sure.
But they haven't been removed, though.
No, they haven't.
So
exactly.
as much as they've been trampled on, as they've been challenged as much as possible, those checks and balances are still in place for us to exercise and to make sure that the executive is held accountable to the people of South Africa.
I think the public protector is a case in point. Her predecessors were rubber stamps. Now suddenly we've got a public protector who's doing her job. And Parliament became a rubber stamp. Well, now we've got Julius Malema in there. Woo!
I think in many ways, I think what's happening is I think we are sort of testing the limits like of our constitution.
Yeah.
And I think I think what you both say is very interesting because I think you mentioned two things where you have the public protector and you have Julius Malema and the responses that people have to, the public protector doing a job and then there's somehow some sort of outrage or Julius Malema causing mayhem in Parliament. It does seem like these are sort of new things to everyone. Everyone's like, wait, but something like this should not happen in Parliament. Yeah. And everyone's saying, well, the public protector cannot and, of course, should not have so much sway over public opinion. And I think it does perhaps point to, I think, a very little observation that might just say, perhaps we are maturing as, as citizens. Perhaps we are getting to a point where we're discovering, actually, that the Constitution has a number of things that we could exploit, to enhance our democracy.
Yeah.
Institutional democracy, as frustrating as it is probably one of the best things we have at the moment, and we need to work with the systems in place to best serve the people of South Africa. We cannot have the alternative. We cannot have, dare I say it, we can't have a Julius Malema in the presidency. Imagine. What's wrong with Julius? The ANC League is bankrupt at the moment and needing to be taken care of by the mother body because of Julius Malema.
For me, the symbolism of what he brings is really important because it's an ordinary, even how they dressed up in the marketing, is that the ordinary person can engage in a political forum. And for me, that's what we are lacking, the active citizen in our democracy.
Of the EFF members showed up in Parliament wearing red overalls that had been used. Seriously, if they had been used, I would have been happy. You probably would have found that those overalls are made out of China. They're shining still because there's nothing that has happened to them. And more importantly, when they get out of Parliament, when they get out of the glare of the media, they take off those and they put on Louis Vuitton shoes. That, for me, is problematic because, see, we cannot aspire to that. It's not... Even the symbolism that Julius Malema presents, as you say, is not the symbolism that we want. What is the symbolism that we want? Integrity, people who care about this country, people who care about the people of this country, and who put the people first.
Julius Malema, however, represents a major part of the constituency of this country, and we talk about the youth, and we talk about 36% unemployment amongst the youth. So for me, so maybe he goes up there and they're wearing the shiny stuff, but what they are doing is breaking the rules. And for people who come out of, for me at least, people who come from the townships where I grew up, if I think about them observing a parliament all stiff and everyone's really highly educated and the Armani and all of that sort of thing that goes with it, that's a social capital that people may think exclude them. And so for me, it starts to, it's not the elixir, but it starts to kind of chomp at the bit of what is formal, what is acceptable, and that breaking the rules a little bit can also get your voice out.
Well, without a doubt, one of the greatest challenges that we've been facing in South Africa is the notion of the Secrecy Bill. We have seen a dilution of that Secrecy Bill because civil society, opposition parties, thankfully, we're all collectively unified in one voice saying, this is not the kind of thing that we need in South Africa. The reality is, any and all state governments around the world need to have a policy around what to do with information that they deem secret. But there has been a rather dubious way that the ANC-led government has been going about this Secrecy Bill.
Sadly, this is not unique to South Africa. Internationally, in England, in the States, there's this obsession with secrecy, stamp it secret, and the people cannot know. Sorry, we are the people, we have a right to know, and we should be putting their feet in the fire to insist that that is why they represent us. We are entitled to know what they're leading us into.
For me, it's about, if you speak out, that there could be punitive action. So for me, the symbol of that is it impinges on freedom of expression for ordinary people. It's suddenly we have to be concerned with what we say, and for the press, for example, to be concerned about whether what they say could land them in courts. And so for me, that's just not the right for democracy.
The Secrecy Bill is going to be a reality, and we just need to make sure that we fight it as much as possible so that what we're left with at the end of the day is something that, well, some of us will be somewhat happy with, and the rest of us can work with whatever is in there.
I'm having a current crisis at the moment, a personal crisis, because I'm experiencing on a very real level I'll be 43 this year, right? So I'm experiencing what it took for me to go through the 80s, then get educated, then be in a corporate, and then make choices about my life, which is what we fought for. We fought for choice. Exercise those choices, be successful, and do something for my country. And that's a massive ask. And when I look at, so for example, because I'm in business, we will talk to white partners, and we'll try, and the conversation will quickly go to, well, it's time to get over it. It's time to get over it. And I don't want to go into the Zuma Manuel debate with Manuel saying you can't blame apartheid, because that's taken out of context. I think they both meant something when they said it. But there's still some redress. And I feel my bugbear is that white South Africans haven't had their get it moment. Mandela, as wonderful as he was, saved the country from that. And now we still have in our psyche, and a lot of us now, me as a 43-year-old, I'm confronting that. And at the moment it's a personal crisis, because I am growing really angry.
For some people, the reason why South Africa is not where it should be, i.e., many more people should have access to a lot more opportunities than we have right now. For some people, it's merely a point of saying the ANC has done whatever it could have done, but the framework that exists, in this instance, the Constitution, does not allow them to do more. I think that's not entirely true. I think that, in fact, the problem does not entirely lie with the document. We could amend the Constitution in its entirety tomorrow, and we could add 15 more sections to it. But if there is no political will, and there is no sense of the values and the principles that that both of you are sort of talking about, then nothing happens.
And yet it's been tested so many times.
Yes.
The Constitutional Court would not be as busy as it is if people were not constantly taking, certainly decisions that have been made by government, decisions that have been taken by courts, to the highest body in our land that determines on that Constitution.
I always become like a little bit disillusioned when we get to this stage of conversations, and because I love the ideas, but then it always comes back to me as, how do we get there, And so I started to get excited. I was like, yeah, we're cheap at the price, yes. And then I think, okay, so how do we get there? And it's not a doom and gloom. It's a real question, a real practical question with a real intention to help us as South Africans, all of us, find those kernels that allow us to waken up that agency where we all say that, we can make a difference in our own lives. We can. And that for me is like, that's where we're falling short at the moment. It's about the Constitution in some of the rural outlying areas is a document that people know exists, but what does it really mean for me? And how can I use it to make a difference in my life? And I think that's kind of where I begin to become a bit disillusioned with the conversation about ideas. And
yet it's made a difference. There are more people with running water out of their homes and are able to go to a loo that probably won't flush, but at least it's been constructed in the rural parts of South Africa. There are people now who are able to switch on electricity, and it's not the best road, but it's certainly an improvement on the gravel road that they had. And all of that has been delivered because this Constitution promises the ideals that this government has to achieve there. So they might not be able to recite all the 36 clauses of the Constitution verbatim to you, but they certainly their lives have been improved, which is why 60+% of South Africans will vote for the ANC for quite some time because they've done that right.
But at some point we've got to make the transition between things being done for and the ability to do it for yourself.
But my dream is that we appreciate ourselves more, that we realize that we have a very rich history, a painful one as well, but that the lessons that we've learned over the years are important for us to make great strides in the future. And I think that everyone's dreams collectively summed up will
will give us the South Africa that we all yearn for.
My dream is South Africa continues to be a place where anything can happen and does. We are a rather chaotic country, which is fantastic. You know, people around the world say, my God, what goes on in South Africa, both good and bad, is hugely, hugely energetic. And we've got to do that, continue that, and yes, good and bad continue.
My dream is that every South African lives with hope. Hope for the future that they want to create and the means to be able to achieve it. I think of parents who live in areas where they would like to see their children becoming anything that they dream of, and that they can live with that hope and they see it as possible, and there's a pathway in which they can achieve it.
I have a dream that we all become active citizens in this country, because that is the only way that this constitution is going to come alive, that this democracy is going to prosper.